Kaloflahiatu, I'm Soraya Mangawa and welcome to our news bulletin for tonight. Leading our news tonight, Minister of Health Honourable Sauni Tongatule made a national address on TV Niue on Tuesday this week to announce that 5 of the first flight of passengers for quarantine-free travel on Monday this week has tested positive for COVID-19. The cases and 54 close contacts are now currently isolating and awaiting the results for day-free tests completed today. The 5 positive cases were part of the first quarantine-free travel flight of 118 passengers from Auckland. 48 passengers are considered close contacts and are currently in self-isolation. 12 household members who are considered close contacts of the 5 passengers are also close contacts and are in isolation. A medical team of doctors, nurses and health officials from New Zealand will be arriving next week to assist the Niue Health Department and hospital staff, according to Premier Dalton Tangelangi. He told BCN News that these were all part of the plans in response to the presence of COVID on the island. BCN News reached out to Sir Colin Tukuitonga of the Auckland University Medical School, who said that the positive cases arriving from the island were anticipated. Sir Colin is encouraging the people to follow the advice of the health officials and to practice what has been known over the past 2 years to wear masks and social distance. He said that best advice for locals is to mask up even if others are not and to avoid gatherings, especially indoors. Director General of Health Gayleen Tasmania yesterday confirmed the free locations of interest that some of the 5 active cases visited. On Monday, 27th of June, Scenic Matavai Resort from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. On Tuesday, 28th of June, some of the active cases were at the Crazyunga Cafe in Central Alofi from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and Pelini's Travel Agency at Opahi Alofi South from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Director General Tasmania said that they are anticipating new cases from today's Day 3 tests and people should be prepared for quick alert level changes should it be required. Drive-through testing is available to passengers and locals every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 12 midday at the UFO Hospital. BCN will continue to be on alert for health and government advisories and will be updating on Radio Sunshine and TV Niue as information comes to hand. The Chief of Justice of the Niue High Court, Judge Coxhead, has handed down his decision on the court application filed by Niue Lawn Bowls to review NISCA decision to suspend Niue Lawn Bowls from the national sports body and the selection of the Lawn Bowls to the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. Chief Justice Coxhead ruled in favour of the applicant Niue Lawn Bowls. And here is Esther Bavihi with more.
The Niue Lawn Bowls filed an urgent application before the Niue High Court, which was heard via a Zoom court hearing on Wednesday this week. The application contained 2 matters seeking the court's ruling on the suspension of the Niue Lawn Bowls from the NISCA National Sports Body Association and also seeking the court's ruling on the legality of the selection of the Niue Lawn Bowls team for the Commonwealth Games. BCN News received a copy of the judgment on the matter of the suspension of Niue Lawn Bowls from NISCA. Judge Coxhead ruled the suspension violated the rules of natural justice and is therefore null and void. On the matter of the selection of the Lawn Bowls team as part of Team Niue to the Birmingham Games, Judge Coxhead ruled the NISCA unilateral decision of the Lawn Bowls team null and void, as NISCA had acted beyond its legal authority to select the team without consulting with Niue Lawn Bowls. In a statement to BCN News, Niue Lawn Bowls President Des Hipper said that this has been a difficult time for all the Niue Lawn Bowls members, and himself included as president, including the executive, as it has indeed put unnecessary strain and stress on all involved, but more importantly for the lawn bowl athletes. Des Hipper says that under the rules of the Commonwealth Games Federation, because the deadline of 29 June for final team naming has passed, that it's only NISCA that can request an extension of time for lawn bowls to be represented at the Commonwealth Games 2022. Once extension is approved by the Commonwealth Games Federation, Niue Lawn Bowls, in agreement with NISCA, will confirm the rightful endorsed authorised team as put forward by Niue Lawn Bowls in agreement with NISCA in order to ensure all athletes selected are eligible and able to represent Niue in the sport of lawn bowls at the Commonwealth Games. Failing this, there will be no lawn bowls team participating at the Commonwealth Games 2022, which will be devastating. The judgment by Chief Justice Coxhead said that in considering the evidence and submissions that has been presented, it appears that underlying this application are issues of funding, team selection, athlete eligibility, relationships between individuals involved in sports in Niue and NISCA, and issues of communications between parties. These are clearly issues of fairness, fairness of process, and natural justice. In a statement to BCN News, Des Hipa says that this decision is welcoming, as it not only ensures protection of our Niue Lawn Bowls management and administration of our sport, but also that of other sport codes, and more importantly, ensure that NISCA follows fairness, fairness of process, and natural justice in its working relationship with all sports codes on Niue. Des Hipa confirmed that the Commonwealth Games Federation and World Bowls will be notified of the Niue High Court decision. Attempts to reach NISCA President Mauru Talangi and executive members today were unsuccessful. The Niue team to the Birmingham Commonwealth Games was officially announced last week, and the Niue-based athletes and officials are scheduled to leave the island on the 11th of July.
Power was fully restored for the whole island on Tuesday this week, after a long week of experiencing unexpected power outages. But the impact of the power outages greatly affected the outer villages on the north and eastern side of the island, who experienced a much longer period of having no power.
On Wednesday night last week, the northern villages from Namkulu through to Liku on the east coast of the island had no power supply until 8 p.m. on Thursday. Power was restored from Friday until Saturday, when the Department of Utilities of the Ministry of Infrastructure informed the village councils that due to unstable power supply, power will be rationed. This resulted in an island-wide power shutdown on Saturday evening from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. Power was back on for the southern feeder from the villages of Alofi going south to the village of Hakupu, but the villages covered by the northern feeder remained without power. Niue Power staff worked throughout the weekend into the early hours of Sunday morning to restore power, but there was another island-wide power outage on Sunday, the 26th of June, around midday, which stayed off for most of the island until 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday this week. An engineer from New Zealand arrived on the first quarantine-free travel flight on Monday to help restore power, working with Niue Power Corporation to restore the island's power supply. His arrival was greeted with cheering from relief locals at the airport.
Premier Dalton Tagelangi will be leaving next week on an extended overseas trip to attend several meetings, including the Forum Leaders meeting in Fiji. Premier Tagelangi told BCN News that it is planned for him to complete several key meetings on the trip, including his attendance at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Here's more on this story.
Premier Dalton Tagelangi will on Monday next week leave the island for the first time since becoming Premier in June 2020. He will be away for a few weeks to attend several meetings and the Commonwealth Games.
My intended trip will be for the Forum Pacific Island Leaders meeting in Fiji on the 10th and the 12th, but before that I will be leaving here on the 4th. I've got quite a few other meetings leading up to that. There's foreign ministers meeting. There's leaders of the ACP and others as well before the forum take place.
Also on his travel agenda is a high-level meeting between the leaders and government delegations from Niue and New Zealand. Premier Tagelangi will be heading to Wellington first and will be joined by the Minister of Finance and the Financial Secretary and a high-level delegation from Niue. They will meet with New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and government officials from New Zealand. Part of the discussions will be on two key points that Premier Tagolangi says has always been his intention to discuss with New Zealand when he became the Premier.
Well, I've already clearly stated from the beginning when I became a leader, there's two things that I want to address. It's the reaffirmation of our constitutional agreement arrangement with New Zealand. That is important to me going forward, so we know where exactly our stance with New Zealand going forward, and also their support to Niue.
Premier Tagolangi also confirmed to BCN News yesterday that he and his family are in isolation because one of the 5 active cases from the flight on Monday is his adult daughter. He said that they are all well, and as close contacts, his family were tested and returned negative tests on Tuesday. In a statement to BCN News today, he says that everyone is to play their role. For those who wish to come back home to visit families and loved ones, to please follow the procedures and rules set out. He says that the government has honoured the wishes of those families and friends living abroad to come back to Niue, and that the government expect them to obey the rules and guidelines in place. Premier says the onus is on everyone to be honest with officials, and there will be no shortcuts.
The impact of the power outage in the past week left many locals and major infrastructures in dire need of assistance. Some were lucky to have their own backup personal generators, while most had to hope that the power would soon restore as soon as possible. The power outage took out the national broadcaster BCN services off air for 48 hours, leaving most people on the island unaware of what was happening. Concerns were raised by people from the outer villages who have been without power since Saturday night, with people asking for freezer containers so they can store their food. There were concerns about water, as without power, water supply from the water tanks were not working. Concerns are also raised about the medications of people that have gone without power for more than 2 days. The Broadcasting Corporation's generator, which kicked in during the first outage, wasn't able to perform when the power was shut down on Saturday night, meaning the national broadcaster went dark for 48 hours. The decision was made to ration power to ensure key infrastructure, such as the hospital and the telecom station at Kaimisi, were prioritized. Despite the best efforts to keep 4G services running, the generators at the tower at Sekena used by Telecom also failed. Generators supplying power to other key infrastructure also failed. BCN's Radio Sunshine and TV Niue returned back on air on Tuesday afternoon. Before the first flight of quarantine-free travel arrived on Monday this week, people have felt uneasy about relaxing travel restrictions and opening of borders. But after the 5 new cases of COVID-19 was announced earlier this week, changes in the community are becoming more evident, especially with schools having to wear masks as a mandatory measure. Here's more on this story.
Minister of Health Honourable Sauni Tongatule's announcement on Tuesday night the 5 new cases of COVID-19. All the schools, Niue High School, Niue Primary and USP will remain open, but masks are mandatory. Niue High School on social media informed the community that parents can keep their children at home if they think that this is the safest measure for them. Wearing a mask is compulsory, especially when inside the classroom. The classroom also provides masks. The safety of the students and staff is always the school's first priority. Visitors to the school are required to wear a mask, or entry into the school is prohibited.
21 qualifications, including a master's and undergraduate qualifications, were awarded to graduates at the University of South Pacific at a graduation ceremony held last Friday. This is the second graduation ceremony on the island and the last for Premier Dalton Tagolangi as Chancellor of the University of South Pacific, which comes to an end today, June 30th. BCN cameras were at the graduation, and here are some highlights for you. congratulations to all USB graduates for your graduation. And that brings us to the end of our news for this evening. Do join us again next week for more of our local news, and also tomorrow for News of the Week radio program with Esther Pavihi, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And until then, wishing you all a safe weekend. Stay safe, wear your masks and social distance. Kia munuina.